any data. You don't have any conclusive, balanced, controlled, randomized scientific experiments that show this is a good idea. You only have your belief in it. Evangelist. In fact, if you don't have belief, if you don't have passion, if you don't have your heart in this idea, you won't be successful. So it's not just nice to be excited about Agile or whatever your new idea is. It's a requirement. It's necessary to be enthusiastic and passionate and to believe that this is a good idea. So that is the requirement before you can introduce anything into your organizations, that you believe that it's a good idea. And then once you believe, we want you to be agile about introducing anything. We want you to do a little agile feedback cycle. The patterns are just do it. Take time for reflection. Stop. Look at what you've done that works well, and then proceed with baby steps, step by step. So if you want your organization to go agile, you don't make out an elaborate plan. You don't look at what's going to happen over the next 6 months for a giant rollout. You begin a small series of cheap experiments. Well, let's try this on one team. Well, let's try an experiment with another team. And then we will reflect and we will see how those cheap experiments are working. And then we will take what is good, what seems to help us, and we will build on that step by step, incrementally. Just as we deliver software in an agile process, we're going to improve our organizations and deliver innovation in exactly the same way. By repeating this little feedback cycle, try it. Just do it. Make a small experiment. Stop. Do a retrospective. See what's working. Build on your successes. Proceed step by step. Oh, here's another myth. Goodness. Goodness always wins. It's called the just world hypothesis. It's a cognitive bias in our brains that we believe somehow that the good guys should win. And when we have a great idea, whether it's Agile or some of the Agile practices, we think, those are good ideas, I believe in them. And that should be enough. After all, if it's good, that's convincing, is it not? If I talk to my team, if I talk to the people in my organization, they should be able to see how good this idea is. I think you can probably look back on your history or the history of a lot of other countries in the world. And you can think of a time when maybe good ideas did not win, when the good guys did not win, when the good ideas were lost, when the good people were lost. So this is a myth. The idea of justice, the idea of truth, beauty, goodness, that those things win just because they're good. I did it because my idea, my country, my people somehow required that we do these terrible things. So goodness is something we all believe we are part of. Our ideas are good. So it depends what side you're on. Both sides believe in a war that they're both doing the right thing, that they're both good guys, that they both should win. So don't rely on this one. Don't fall back on goodness as a reason for saying that should be convincing. That's all I really need to do. I'm enthusiastic about it, I believe in it, and it's a good idea. Shouldn't that be enough? Why do I have to give any more than just to believe that it's a good idea? We have to do influential things. And one of my favorites is do food. And it's the realization that however far we are from our Stone Age ancestors, the most powerful way to influence people is to feed them. I think we're going to have lunch at this conference, aren't we? Yeah, I think we are. And here's what research shows, that when you feed people, they are more open to your ideas. They're more likely to listen to what you have to say. So when you go back to your organizations tomorrow and you're all excited about some new idea, a flavor of Agile, or we're going to hear about TDD and pair programming, and you say, I would like to talk to my team about possibly some experiments with these new ideas. One very good way of doing that is to bring them all together and to provide some food. Some nice cookies, or, well, I don't know what it would be for you, but something special. And when you do that, you're moving them in the direction of listening to your idea and being more open to trying it, to trying a small experiment. There are some languages, I don't know your language, but French, for instance, the French language, the word for friend, my friend, is compagnon. And it means someone who shares bread with me. And even in the United States, where we have too much food, we are the fattest nation on the face of the earth, after all. Even in that country, food is powerful. It's an influencer. So use that tool to your advantage. So you have belief, you have the idea of small feedback cycles, and now you have do food. You have a handful of patterns to help you be successful. This one, I'm not sure. Do you believe it? If only I were powerful enough, if I were the CEO or the president, then I could make change. I could move my organization to become agile. Do you believe that? Hello, is anybody awake out there? Nobody believes that. You could make it happen. Oh, come on. Surely somebody. Yeah, power is good, is it not? With power, you can make people do whatever you want. I once had a vice president tell me, oh, Linda, I don't need these patterns. I'm the vice president of a large organization. I tell people what to do, and if they don't do it, I fire them. That's actually very effective. You do it, or I fire you. People will line up. People will do what they're told if they're threatened. That's absolutely true. The problem with that is you get what's called compliance. And that means as soon as you shift your attention, if you're not monitoring their behavior, they will revert to what they were doing before. And this has been shown by research over and over again, that simply forcing people, because you have enough power, does not get their hearts, does not encourage them to believe, And so when the initiative dies, everyone goes back to the way they were working before. So you don't want compliance. You don't want people to do it just because it is a requirement in order to keep their jobs. That is not sustainable. What you want is commitment. You want people to do it because they also believe that it's a good idea. You want them to be agile or to use pair programming because they see that it's a better way of working. They believe that this is the best way forward. And to get that, power will not help you. Power does not help you win commitment. Does not help you win hearts. You need something else. You need to think of everybody in a personal way. And you need to address the question that every single person in your organization is asking, why should I do this? In the United States, we say this is WFM. What's in it for me? Why should I care about Agile? What's in it for me? What problems will it solve that I face on a daily basis now? What's in it for my way of working? What's in it for my way of looking at the world? And that is different for developers, for testers, for managers, for executives, for people on the business side. They all see the development world in a different way, and the benefits for them are different. So if you're going to be convincing, if you're going to win their hearts, their commitment, you need to address that question. And you need to think about what will it do to help the development team, the testers, the managers, the business side. They all need to be involved when you move to Agile. You can't just move to Agile as individuals. It's going to take the entire organization, and that question must be addressed. Another quote from Jeff Patton, you have to address a genuine user need. These are all the users of your idea. Data does not equal empathy. You can't understand what a user or a customer really wants by looking at a study. You can only understand what users or customers want by looking, by observing, by asking questions, by trying to understand their world, their point of view. Stephen Covey, who wrote several great business books, including The 7 Habits to Highly Effective People, said, you must walk in their shoes to really understand how they see the world and how they think. And that will help you address their problems with your great idea. So we know that when anyone is faced with a new idea, they have one of a set of reactions. If you look at that first group, the innovators, it doesn't matter what it is. Innovators love new ideas. They get excited about the latest gadget, even if it doesn't work well. I call them the low-hanging fruit. They just love new things. But look how small that number is. 2.5%, hardly anything, just a small blip. It's enough to get you going, but it's not enough to make real change. The second group are called the early adopters. Now, the early adopters do like logical argument. The early adopters do like data. They do like information. They do want to hear what you learned at the conference today. They would like to hear a report about that nice panel discussion that's coming up. They want to know what Johanna said about pair programming and TDD. They want to learn. They love learning. And they are open, and they will listen, but they need some data. So you have the innovators who just get excited about new ideas. You have the early adopters who want more information. But even look together. The early adopters, only 13.5%. Throw that together with the innovator, we'd have hardly anything. It's a good start. It's a good way to begin. But it's not enough to make real change. In order to do that, you need to encourage the early majority. So there was a wonderful book by Clay Christensen, written several years ago. It was called Crossing the Chasm. And in it, he said a lot of startups, a lot of small companies do their marketing to those top two groups. They market to the innovators. They market to the early adopters. And that's such a small percentage of the entire population. And they never think about all of the other categories of possible customers. They ignore them completely. So yes, initially that new iPhone, sure, it's going to sell, and then it will stop. All the innovators will line up. The early adopters will do some research, and some of them will buy that new product, but then it stops. If you're going to make headway, either with your innovative product or with your new idea in your organization, you have to leap across the giant chasm that celebrates the difference between those who are eager and open and those who are a little resistant. The early majority, they don't buy anything. They don't adopt anything until they can see other people they know who are using it or who are following that practice. So get started with the innovators and the early adopters, and as you begin to have success, as people start to try pair programming and they begin to see the advantages and they can talk about it throughout the organization, and that's very convincing for people in the early majority. And now look how big that group is. It's over a third. So when you put together the early majority, the early adopters, and the innovators, you got a big chunk of the population. Just by starting with the innovators and early adopters, letting them provide evidence for the early majority, and then don't worry about the rest. Because there is no way you're going to convince them. There's no way they're going to buy that new iPhone. It's just not going to happen. Look what the late majority says. If I have to, I guess. So members of the late majority are not going to buy that new high-tech product until the one they have now is no longer working, and they're forced to buy that iPhone. But until then, maybe they don't even have an iPhone at all, because the landline phone they have at home works perfectly well. So why should they carry this extra device? Why should they spend all the money on the device itself and on the plans to support it? Why should they do that? Only if they have to. And there's still yet another category below that. We've always done it this way. So you're not going to convince those latter two categories. So don't worry about it. Concentrate on the innovators, the early adopters. Let them convince the early majority. And usually that is called critical mass and is enough to move even the most laggard of organizations to slowly adopt change. It is never going to happen quickly. Organizational change takes a lot of time, and there will always be the people in the lower categories who will resist it until they are fired. And sometimes it does come to that. So save your cookie money and your energy and focus on those top two groups and let them help you convince